Choline is a very important part, a very fundamental part of any good nootropics kind of protocol, in my opinion, because choline, or more specifically acetylcholine, is the neurotransmitter involved in higher thought at the prefrontal cortex, as well as motor control in the motor cortex. Now, choline comes from dietary sources and crosses the blood-brain barrier where it's acetylated into acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is released across the synaptic cleft from the end bulb, across the cleft, and unlike other neurotransmitters such as dopamine or serotonin, which are reuptaken for re-release later on, acetylcholine is actually broken down by an enzyme called acetylcholine esterase, which is then moved away. So you need a constant, you can think of it as a waterfall almost, you need a constant efflux of acetylcholine every time that there's a synaptic message, synaptic firing going on. So if we are depleting our acetylcholine levels faster because we're using other nootropics or we're constantly studying, then if you think about it, we need to put more in at the neuron. Okay, so more acetylcholine comes in at the neuron, travels down the axon, hits the end bulb, okay, and is released. So if we want to be able to maintain or increase that level of acetylcholine within the synaptic cleft, there are two ways we can do it. One, we can put more in at the top. Two, we can prevent it being taken away at the bottom. So if the enzyme is called acetylcholine esterase, we need an acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. And nature has given us a pretty good and effective one in the form of something called huperzine A, which is extracted from plants. You only need a small dose, say 50 to 100 micrograms, and that will act as a very mild acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. You can get pharmaceutical options. I've never tried them and I never really would want to because they are associated with diseases like myasthenia gravis and stuff like that. So we stick with the herbal version, and the average nootropics person is probably quite bamboozled by the sheer magnitude of choices available to them when it comes to choline replenishment and choline sources. You can buy choline bitartrate, you can buy CDP choline, you can buy dimethylaminoethanol, you can buy centrophenoxine, you can buy alpha GPC, and there's probably 2 or 3 others that escape me at this moment. So why are there so many, and what are the potential benefits and downfalls of each one? Well, choline bitartrate, some people find that it doesn't agree with them intestinally and causes gas and things like that. CDP choline is shown to have an effect on dopamine, so that may be a benefit if we're looking at something that maybe the person who lacks a little bit of motivation doesn't quite rightly want to start using Adderall or Ritalin, which fairly directly increase dopamine levels or mimic dopamine. We can use something like CDP choline to both increase acetylcholine levels and mildly increase dopamine, which should increase feelings of motivation and well-being and energy. We can look at something like dimethylaminoethanol, which is a personal favourite of mine. It's extracted from oily fish and seems to be very well tolerated. And as a nice side benefit, it's got quite a nice tangy taste to it as well. So, for example, if you put some into a workout drink, you can zing it up a little bit, make it a little bit more refreshing and palatable, which is quite nice. If we're also looking at taste sensation, then alpha GPC, quite sweet. You could use it, I guess, if you wanted to, maybe to sweeten up your coffee or something like that, okay? But within standard recommended doses. Now, one of the minor disadvantages of alpha GPC is that it's hygroscopic. What that means is it absorbs a lot of water. So you could try putting it into capsules, but they might turn mushy. Or your tub, if you leave it slightly open or you don't put the silica gel thing in, could start to become quite coagulated. Yeah, just a very minor effect. Now, one of the advantages of alpha GPC is that it's been shown in some studies to increase growth hormone levels. So if that's what you consider to be important, and I don't see why you wouldn't, because growth hormone does have a multitude of health effects, including cognition and maintenance of general all-round well-being and things like that in many body systems. So that's a side benefit, and there's no reason to not take alpha GPC just because you're taking DMAE, okay? But then there's no reason, as some companies do, just to kind of seem to shotgun in as many choline sources as possible and just hope for the best, right? You know, I could see a value in putting DMAE with alpha GPC and maybe some CDP choline, but then leave out the choline bitartrate, and you probably don't need the centrophenoxine. Leading on to centrophenoxine, there is another video that I've done out there which explains it in a little bit more detail, but just as a quick summary, centrophenoxine is a good choline source, but also more importantly, in my opinion, it has been shown to remove lipofuscin, or the age-related pigment, from neurons. So you can think of that as like a ball of wire wool rusting quietly in the middle of the cell. It's going to interfere with intracellular communication. So if we can minimize that build-up, we can optimize cell function as we go into old age, or middle age and old age. So there are lots of different choline sources. You should experiment with them to your own satisfaction. I mean, we put DMAE into Neurostim because, as I say, it's very well tolerated and has been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier quite effectively. We may look at putting CDP choline into a different product because of the dopamine effect. Centrophenoxine into yet another product because it may be slightly more effective than DMAE, and we're going to be combining it with Racetam that may be associated with even faster depletion of acetylcholine. So there's method in our madness, and when you're experimenting, there should be method in your madness as well.